And hello, everyone. I'm Josh Elliott. It is just before noon here in the East. And, well, the story of the hour just completed. Now, Donald Trump today emphatically defending his fundraising efforts on behalf of America's veterans. Speaking from Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan here in New York City, the presumptive GOP nominee said that he raised $5.6 million, which was then split across dozens of different charities, 41 to be exact. Trump said the process to vet the different organizations following the January fundraising event was time-consuming. He also slammed the press for the way it portrayed him in the months that followed.
I raised close to $6 million. It'll probably be over that amount when it's all said and done. But as of this moment, it's $5.6 million. When this started with a speech in Iowa when I said, let's raise some money for the vets. And it went up from $1 million to $2 million to $3 million. And it now ends up to be almost $6 million. And again, I think we can even do better than that. But I will say that the press should be ashamed of themselves. And on behalf of the vets, the press should be ashamed of themselves. They are calling me and they are furious because I sent people checks of a lot of money, and I'm going to give you the names right now, which is what you want. And instead of being like, thank you very much, Mr. Trump, or Trump did a good job, everyone say, who got it, who got it, who got it? And you make me look very bad. I have never received such bad publicity for doing such a good job.
Here to parse it all, CBSN political contributor Leslie Sanchez, and joining us from Washington, Slate political writer Jim Newell. And just for those, again, who may just be joining us now, Jim, I want to begin with you. I'm, in fact, holding the list that he read from, 41 names in all, along with the amounts that he said had been given. Obviously, this is a list that will be vetted now by the press. It was the same press that he attacked for asking questions. He called them false stories that were written in the months that followed. The press assembled deferred to words such as scrutiny. What did you make of what we just saw?
Well, I think he did a pretty effective job, even if it was maybe a little bit cynical, blaming this all on the press and showing that there was nothing to ever hide here. If that was the case, though, it makes you wonder why it took him so long to show this. It was maybe that he had it ready all along and was just trying to, hold on to it so he could then come out and lash out at the press again today. Or maybe there was some scrambling at the last minute. But it was very combative, but I think he probably did a pretty good job of putting it to bed. I mean, it should just be said, one of his surrogates who was speaking said he was a veteran who had been in the Marines for 22 years, and he said that he's familiar with veterans charities, and he knows there are a lot of scammers in the industry. And I think that sort of explains what the press was trying to do here. If someone says they've raised a lot of money for veterans group and then don't see those disbursements, then there's naturally going to be a lot of questions to make sure that money did go out. And he says, that he maybe didn't want to make a big deal of this. He didn't want his name attached, but that doesn't necessarily wash, considering he held a big, televised fundraiser to raise money for vets. So it seems like it was answered now, and it seemed like he was pressured into doing it, but it didn't necessarily need to be this combative.
You mentioned the surrogate. That was Al Baldessaro, a New Hampshire state representative. And if then, Leslie, this is part performance as well,
Sure.
perhaps to a base. It was interesting even how it began, that he took to the lectern, invoked names like Eisenhower and Ronald Reagan, if only to say, I have received more votes than they ever did in the election cycle process, in the primary process, and then went into a discussion of the money raised, but waited until it was asked via question, as if this was just another stop that unfortunately had to involve this question. What did you make of somebody who invokes television ratings and understands exactly the optics of most situations he's in? What did you make of the performance aspect of what we saw today?
I think he's definitely showing that he commands the stage. I mean, that you can't deny that at all. He's coming in and saying he's had more votes than any Republican primary contender, he says, in history. I know people are going to go check that out. And there have been large turnouts, but he's trying to show that he's part of a momentum, that he's bigger than this type of scrutiny. And he is looking for some benefit of the doubt, not understanding. That's probably one of the most difficult things candidates have to finally understand, and Major Garrett talked about it. It is actually very difficult. It takes about 4 months for a candidate on the national press tour to understand this line of questioning does not lighten as you get closer to November. In fact, the heat increases. So I think there's a lot of fairness there. I'm also going to say that one thing that came up before in Iowa, when he first started disclosing who some of these organizations were, is they said how many of them were local to the state of Iowa. And he really didn't have an answer to that. So some reporters are going to go back through this list and say how many of them were hometown heroes, hometown veterans, who were initially the focus of the big political rally that he had. So the question is, was it political theater? Was he using veterans as pawns in that event? That was the criticism. Now he comes forward and says, no, here's the actual money. But the question is, does it go back to the organizations he originally said he was there to support?
Given his previous comments regarding John McCain at the beginning of his campaign, Jim, this has proven to be murky waters for this candidate. The notion of Veterans Affairs, he not only obviously went into this annotated list, but also discussed the VA, called it one of the great catastrophes in this country, and promised really an overhaul, if in general terms, of the medical care that veterans will be provided with Donald Trump in the White House. What did you make of his pivot to the idea of Veterans Affairs as something he could own?
Well, I'm not sure that was a pivot. That was something from the very beginning of his campaign that he was talking about. And I think that, you'll hear every politician, anywhere talk about how much good they're going to do for veterans. I think a lot of Trump supporters and a lot of veterans appreciated it that he put it in maybe his top 3 issues. He would say, immigration, we're going to solve immigration, and then something else, and then the vets. They're always right up there. So I think maybe he gets a little bit of a pass when he runs his mouth a little bit too far, maybe says something about John McCain, anything like that. And that sort of matches with what I found when talking to Trump voters. Did this one comment turn you off? And they're like, yeah, that was, unfortunate, but we still think he'd be best for the country. I think if you look at his base of supporters, they have a real emotional bond with him now. They sort of just really connect with the guy. So that's why he sort of gets away with a lot of things that might really hurt another candidate.
And so in the end, Leslie, you were shaking your head as you were saying.
South Carolina, because nobody really thought. They thought that the Bushes would do very well in South Carolina because of the long history of supporting the military. You had everyone there. The comments that he made against John McCain, Lindsey Graham was in there constantly pushing on that point, and it really had very little effect. I think this is again a case where they like the leadership style. They're willing to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. They want to shake things up, and I think on the VA front, it's a very good contrast for him as the Republican nominee compared to Hillary Clinton, who said, you're really overstating the crisis, and she's trying to downplay that. So he looks like he's much more in line with the making America first again.
It seems like for his supporters, there was plenty of meat today. Perhaps there was detractors as well. Leslie Sanchez, Jim Newell, we very much appreciate the time today.